People who ran into the weird kid from school years later. How did he or she turn out? My friend's dad told him about weird classmate he had. Nobody really took him seriously. When they were in their last grades, that kid decided that right after school he will be growing fungi instead of studying. Everyone laughed at him. And guess what? Right now he owns probably the largest organic farm business both in the country and most likely in the whole region. We had a kid that would do weird shit in front of other kids for attention. Climb into bins, eat old food out of the bins, let people throw yogurt over him, dive into bushes, that sort of thing. Otherwise he seemed mostly harmless. Ended up in prison for pouring a kettle of boiling water over a guy and a girl who he fancied. They were at a house party. He saw her talking to a guy, so he went to the kitchen, boiled the kettle, then calmly walked up to them and poured it over their heads. I'm not sure he had ever even spoken to her, but he was seemingly jealous that she was talking to another guy. Then after he was released from prison for that, he took his mother's car on a joyride with two of his mates, crashed into a car driven by an elderly couple, then ran off leaving his two mates dead and the elderly couple badly injured. I think he's still in prison for that. Not quite as bad, but we had another weird kid who would talk to no one and would spend all day drawing graffiti in a sketchbook, which he guarded with his life. Not good graffiti. He just kept drawing his tag in different fonts. I think it was Aspect or some other badly spelt word. If he spoke, it was usually just to tell people how great he thought Banksy was. He ended up spraying this tag all over our small and otherwise graffiti-free English town, and was immediately arrested after his old teachers recognized it. I think the sketchbook was used as evidence. He was then arrested a second time for spraying his tag on the side of the courthouse in front of half a dozen CCTV cameras. I bumped into him a year or so back, and he now works for a charity which runs a kids club in the next town over. He teaches kids how to skate and BMX as well as running street art classes, where they legally decorate the skate park with graffiti. I wouldn't say I ran into him, but I occasionally drive past the penny kid walking around slumped in a leather jacket and greasy hair on a hot summer day. I really have no idea what he's doing with his life, but he still seems pretty weird. Back in high school he was always collecting change that he'd find on the ground, and I found out later he actually saved up $500 or so and donated it to charity. I thought a lot differently about him once I found out. Didn't run into him, but randomly saw a TED talk he gave on YouTube. He's a physicist now and has been lobbying the government to increase funding for science education in order to ensure future generations can continue the fight against climate change. He's a way better person than I became. One kid like that died in a car accident senior year. Everyone then pretended they were his best friend and that they were so sad, etc, etc, etc. These people basically ducking tortured this kid. Their reactions were disgustingly fake. I never realized how many funny monsters I knew until that happened. Luckily I never had to see those people again soon after. She was actually doing really well. I almost didn't recognize her because she looked so much different. She'd joined the military, so was cleaned up, in better shape, etc, and seemed like she was happy. Sadly she died in a car accident a year or so later. Girl in high school used to be really to herself. Super into him. Just assumed she was shy, so I'd make a point to have small chats with her every day until one day she said her pillow wasn't doing her right. Apparently her pillow had conscience and she used it to, Graduated a few months later. Fast forward to about 3 months ago. I'm making coffee at a cafe when said girl walks up to me. She's super polite and bubbly, but as I ask how her day is going she tells me the demon she is sleeping with was actually her guardian angel and she needed him around or something. Haven't seen her since. This was a wild ride. Ran into the kid who was effectively the school bully. He wasn't a physical bully, but made fun of everyone and was just mean in general at the bank one day, and I didn't even recognize him. He walks up to me holding his daughter and gave me a classic white guy well goddammit, how the heck are ya? And this is gonna sound crazy, but he legit became the nicest guy in the world. Extremely well adjusted, great family, great career, He invited me to go out to the driving range the following Sunday, and for whatever reason I was inclined to go. Wound up hitting golf balls and smoking J's with him for most of the day, and had a heart-to-heart. Turns out he was terribly abused his entire life and his father punished him by forcing him to stay awake all night. He was petrified to go home, so he did whatever he could to get detention. Explains a lot. Never judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. I don't know, he keeps making shitty edits of Drew Pickles from the Rugrats going places around town and talking in a text-to-speech voice. There was this kid in junior high that was really quiet and had no friends at the time. One day my English teacher pulls me out of the classroom and asks me to befriend him because he didn't have friends. So I did, and we became friends. We went to different high schools, so kind lost connection. He would text me every now and then. He found me on Facebook when he was working on his engineering degree. He is now married and works for SpaceX as an engineer. He renamed himself Green Dragon of the West, as a network engineer. So okay, I guess. Still seems about the same. Natural dislike to anyone who tries to talk to him. Assumes everyone is out to get him. He's also put on about 100 pounds and he wasn't a small guy to begin with. I saw her at a con I was working, where she came up to my guest and was telling him about her book that she hadn't started writing, but was due the next day and still had 10,000 words left to write. She also kept looking at her phone and dramatically sighing and saying things about how she wished her publisher would leave her alone. So still making up things to try and make herself look better. I was the weird kid. Mum was never really around. No father figure. We lived in a half-renovated house with animal feces through it because my mum kept her dogs indoors 24/7. We were also extremely broke. Like mum would go hungry to feed my sister and I. My mother, on reflection, was mentally unwell due to the depression of losing her mum 2 years prior. She still hasn't recovered to this day. I realized years later my clothes probably smelt like animal feces all the time. I had very few friends in high school. I ended up getting into drugs at 13 to escape from my shit life. I had no boundaries or restrictions from any parental figures. I also lived on my PlayStation and Gamma Boy due to not having any friends to actually spend time with, making me socially inept. Both my sister and I were eventually uplifted by welfare services and I ended up in a boys' home for 3 years, where I finally got the boundaries and basic care I needed. I had a great social worker who worked hard to set me up with a positive future despite my circumstances. I slowly gained social skills and realized I could have a normal life. After leaving school, I realized I had a strong work ethic that led me to work up to holding management positions in basically every business I've worked in since my early 20s. It also got me through university doing a Bachelor of Social Work. Now I'm a social worker supporting young adults to change the direction of their lives and to have a life they can be proud of. I've just been promoted to manage the service I work for and to grow the service so it can be extended to other districts. I guess I've done all right for myself when I look at where I've come from. My sister became a semi-pro athlete and also graduated uni. She's in a long-term relationship and has a job that enables her to train for her sporting discipline. Mum is doing okay. She's still not mentally there, but she is better than she was, and she does try most days. She loves the grandkids and spoils them every time she sees them. She's got a job now and has held it down for a few months. Her decision making is still poor sometimes, but my sister and I keep an eye on her and challenge her decisions when they are not helpful to her quality of life. He still wears a black trench coat and his black Napoleon Dynamite boots and trudges around down the streets. She moved to New York City and was one of the stars of a Broadway musical. Pretty sure I was the weird kid, but runner-up was a very nice but shy girl who immigrated from China and loved computers, but was incredibly meek. A conversation was like prying teeth, would only make strange noises in class, etc. And frankly, in hindsight, what little she said at the time makes me realize now she was in an emotionally abusive household. Example, she had some small role in a school play in middle school. I was happy for her when I saw that her mom came, as she said she doubted her mom would come. I asked afterwards and she said her mom said she looked like a sack of dog bones on the stage during her part. I legit did not know what to say when she said stuff like that because I was a kid myself. Fortunately, I can say I know how she turned out and it's a happy ending. We went to the same college and she was originally signed up for pre-med because even though this gal was a computer whiz, her mom insisted she had to be a doctor. Within a year though, she rebelled against everything and became a computer science major, the horror, and became an own source of advice for other kids of Asian descent in particular seeking to stand up to their parents' expectations. She's now a test engineer working for a household name computing company and posts pictures of international travel and various geeky hobbies. So I guess she was great once she could find herself, and most of the weirdness was imposed upon her. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.